In my quest to play all the Falcom games I can, I have already completed all the main series games of Trails and East plus Tokyo Xanadu, so naturally my next step in the quest brought me to the Zwei games. These action RPGs may have gone unnoticed by many due to the two main series Trails and East overshadowing all the others, but that doesn't mean that the Zwei games aren't worth playing or that they haven't had a significant impact on Falcom's development. Much like some of my other favorite studios such as Atlus and Supergiant, Falcom loves taking ideas from previous games and tinkering with the mechanics to make something new but familiar for future games. The Zwei games are more action RPG goodness from the company and gave some of the strongest challenges I've faced in recent memory. Do I think they're for everyone? No. But if you are a Falcom fan or a general action RPG fan, I think these games are worth your time. The Zwei series consists of two games, Zwei the Arg's Adventure and Zwei the Ilverd Insurrection. The former came out in 2001, originally for PC. Over the years after, Falcom made ports for the game for the PS2 in 2004 and PSP in 2008. However, the game would not come to the West until all the way in 2018 exclusively for PC courtesy of Xseed Games. Zwei the Arg's Adventure had mainly mixed reviews with critical scores ranging mostly from 6 to 8. Zwei the Ilverd Insurrection came out in 2008 for PC in Japan and 2017 in the West, so yes, the sequel for the Zwei series did come out in the West first before its predecessor. I even remember seeing each of the Zwei localization announcements since I was waiting on the Trails games at the time and noticed some additional Falcom announcements around that time. Not that I dipped my toes into the series then, but I did consider it. Critically, the sequel received moderately more positive reviews than its predecessor, which is to be expected and lines up with my experience about which one is the superior game. Both fun and both very positive in the user reviews on Steam, but there's some things that are frustrating and not as polished. Zwei the Ilverd Insurrection holds an unfortunately dubious historical accomplishment, however, as the final game Nihon Falcom developed exclusively for the PC. The reason being that the game completely flopped in Japan sales-wise, leading to the company re-evaluating its developing platform of choice and killing the Zwei series in one go. It is a bit unfair because, as I said, Zwei the Ilverd Insurrection is a good game, but it got blamed for the failure even though anyone who knew the Japanese PC scene at the time could have predicted this. Thankfully, while the series has ended for now, there was a game that came out that is effectively a spiritual successor to it, and that is The Legend of Nayata Boundless Trails. It's great, you should check it out, along with the games that inspired it, so let's talk more about Zwei. The Zwei games are set in the world of Grandvallen, a series of floating islands where a magical civilization once dwelled. After a great conflict with 6 demon lords called the Great Sorcery War, the civilization collapsed and magic has ebbed from the land. To replace the fading magic, technology such as flight has started to emerge, but many places still have rudimentary technology as well as relics and ruins from the age long gone. Zwei the Arg's Adventure stars Pockle and Pipero, a pair of step-siblings, no it's not setting up for that thankfully, living in Puck Village. One day Pockle and Pipero spy a thief who steals the 6 sacred goddess statues from the village. Pockle vows to bring them back and Pipero agrees once it's clear they will be rewarded monetarily for doing so. The first game follows their quest to retrieve the goddess statues and learning more about the events that ended the Great Sorcery War. Zwei the Ilverd Insurrection occurs on the continent of Ilverd, where treasure hunter Ragnar Valentine has a job to complete. On his way to completing it though, he is attacked and crashes on the continent from his aeroplane, but emerges remarkably unharmed due to the arrival of Alwyn de Mundria, a vampire princess who forms a contract with Ragnar. In return for healing him with the blood contract, Alwyn requests Ragnar's help in reclaiming her castle from her mysterious foe. These do take place in the same land and have a couple recurring characters, but it is not necessary to have played the Arg's Adventure to play and enjoy the Ilverd Insurrection. It would be unfortunate if that was the case given the order they were localized in. Given the way the series seemed to be set up with distinct adventures on each of the continents, I'm curious what Falcom would have done if the series had continued, but alas, we shall never know. The stories in general are routine but enjoyable. The main draw is the colorful characters, and both main character duos have a strong dynamic that helps drive everything forward. The writing has that Falcom charm of having a lot of character depth throughout all the NPCs in the world as well as the main cast and their allies. The world feels alive and rich with character. I will say the Arg's Adventure went all out in the pun department with its writing though, to the point that it became a little much, even for me. The Ilvered Insurrection toned that down on its longer and more focused adventure. Where the ARG's adventure feels like kids setting out on their first adventure, Ilvered Insurrection feels like already capable people thrust into an even wilder situation that they have to step up to handle. Similar writing styles, but different feelings from each of the game. You can pick and choose which one you prefer. The world is split into various dungeons that you'll be exploring around. In the dungeons, there are frequently multiple paths you can take, but it's clear from the recommended level signs warning you which ones you should be taking first, although you can't ignore them if you're feeling gutsy and aren't blocked by other things. The levels tend to be elemental themed, especially for the first game when you would also likely get the corresponding elemental statue at the end of the dungeon. As you explore around, you'll find the standard treasures, pots to break, puzzles to solve, and of course, enemies to fight. When fighting, you can switch between your physical fighter, Pockle or Ragna, or magic fighter, Pipero or Alwyn at any time. Only the one you control will be properly fighting, so quickly changing between them may be necessary to take advantage of certain weaknesses or opportunities. There are some devastating combos you can put to use. For instance, in Ilvered Insurrection, Alwyn's ice magic can freeze enemies, giving Ragna time to wail on them without counterattack. Rinse, repeat, and you'll deal with most one-on-one encounters easily. The standard enemies are not difficult on their own, but Zwei does like to throw you the occasional challenge of swarms of enemies or a couple varied enemies in the same area that compensate for their fellows' weaknesses. The enemy variety in general is a highlight, with a lot of unique enemies with different movesets and styles of attacking you to keep you on your toes. Although, if I see those hamster enemies from Ilvered Insurrection ever again, I am burning all of their wheels! Traversing the levels is an enjoyable experience. The puzzles make you think but aren't a major focus, so they don't get grating, and typically it doesn't take long to get through each section, which keeps the general pacing up. You do get graded on your completion for each level based on amount of damage taken, time, and breakables broken. Do these medals do anything? No, but it's still fun. The games, especially the first one, are more difficult than I would say the average Falcom game is on normal mode, partly because there is only one difficulty mode. The levels will test you as you go through them. You can handle an encounter fine, but will you be able to navigate the whole level without the enemies slowly chipping away your health? It can feel like a gauntlet at times, or a breeze at others depending on how your abilities line up to the challenge. There is some variety in the difficulty, and that goes doubly so for the bosses. The bosses run the whole gamut of possible experiences, from bosses that I thought I would never beat, bosses that I legitimately questioned if the game had broken because they were so easy, and bosses that were simply well put together and balanced challenges. I am glad that most fit into that latter category, but it's the first two that I'm likely going to remember the most, and there were several of those in each game. The biggest thing to understand for Zwei's gameplay, though, is the food and how it relates to experience. As you defeat enemies, you will collect food items from them. These food items are both your health items and your experience points. You do not gain experience points from defeating enemies, you gain them from eating food. It is certainly a unique system, but I will say as a central gimmick, it's annoying at times, because the food is also your only health restoring item. You're constantly vacillating between saving food items up to use to heal during the toughest fights, and eating as much of them as you can to level up. I found myself constantly under-leveled during my runs because of this, but I was usually able to muddle through anyway. For those who want to be at the recommended levels for every level and boss fight though, you're going to be grinding to collect the food you need. This is a system in the game that I think may deter some players from playing, and I can't blame them. It definitely needs more refinement, but I don't hate the concept. There are some other quirks to the game, such as the pets that you have, the pet in Ilvered Insurrection in particular being very helpful for battle. But as is traditional for Falcom games, there are of course mini-games and side content aplenty in both games. In the ARG's adventure, the three mini-games are the bullet hell shooter Zwei Shooting, the block puzzle Mona Mona, and the Ys and Mavis Beacon Teaches Typing crossover we never knew we needed, Ys Typing. Ilvered Insurrection does not return any of those mini-games, and instead has a snowboarding mini-game, which I was very excited for given my love of the Trails of Cold Steel 2 snowboarding game. Unfortunately, the Ilvered Insurrection snowboarding is not of the same quality. Then you have the Coliseum in Ilvered Insurrection, where you fight various different opponents from across the games. That was probably my favorite of the minigames. Honestly, the minigames are all fairly challenging, but it gives a little more to do for those who want it, and otherwise it is free to ignore. What is not free to ignore are the dance breaks in Ilvert Insurrection. I shall put these up without context.
Let's exercise!
For the presentation, there is a significant difference between the two games, as they did come out 7 years apart. The Ark's Adventure is a top-down adventure with detailed sprite work reminiscent of the Ys 1 and 2 remakes that came out that same year, and the Gagarv trilogy for the Legend of Heroes that came out in the years before. With the new Ark of Nepishtim and Trails in the Sky games following Zwei the Ark's Adventure though, the art changed to more 2.5D style, and that is the style that was still the style for the Ilvert Insurrection. This is also why you can jump in Ilvert Insurrection, but not Ark's Adventure. Given the change in the camera view and power of the graphics, the character designs for all characters are more detailed in Ilvert Insurrection, and I think that overall that game has the stronger art design. The location art throughout the games is nicely put together, with of course the later game having more overall detail, but I still love the feel of the areas and dungeons in Ark's Adventure. The cutscenes are pretty similar in quality of the art, however the action in Ilvert Insurrection is smoother and better directed. One area that is good across both games, though, is the music. This is an era of Falcom music that I think is incredible. Lots of great tracks in the Zwei games, from the boss tracks to especially the area themes. There is no voice acting in Ark's Adventure, but there is some for English in Ilvert Insurrection. It's mostly the most important scenes that are voiced, but it's still nice to have. It helped give my voice a rest while streaming, at least. The user experience for the game is actually pretty nice. I have to add the actually, because unfortunately the game doesn't explain the features that it has very well. The hotbar of food items can be used quickly if you use the right keys, but neither game explains this well, with the Zwei games being particularly notorious for doing so much text for their tutorials that it is completely understandable if you miss some things. What would be nice to have some more text on as well is giving some general directions on where to go, especially in the Ark's Adventure. Similarly, there is a button that you can use to pause the game to specifically switch magic or weapon types in Ilvert Insurrection, but likewise, the game does not explain this well either. The Zwei games actually feature a fair amount of useful quality of life features, and if you play blindly, you may miss them, and that's not okay. That's the main negative I would emphasize when it comes to presentation and feel of the game. On the positive side of things, the Zwei games have a charming art style and amazing music. For Falcom completionists, the Zwei games are a must-play. There's plenty of fascinating aspects that would inspire later games, from Tokyo Xanadu to The Legend of Nyata. Would I recommend these games to someone who has not played any Falcom games before though? Probably not. Both are solid games, but they come with significant flaws, mainly with regards to user experience and for people who are new to Falcom's general style of making games. I definitely recommend coming back to them if you play the Ys or Trails games or Xanadu and enjoyed those, but as a first-time Falcom player, I would steer people away from these, although if you're determined, you are more than welcome to do whatever. The benefit from playing them, though, is getting to experience some great music, challenging levels and bosses, more puns than you know what to do with, and a fun group of characters. I found the Zwei games an enjoyable time, and I would love if Falcom was willing to give the series another chance with the smoother gameplay formula they brought to The Legend of Nyata. But alas, that may be a pipe dream. Have any of y'all played the Zwei games? If so, what did you think? Let me know in the comments and give this video a like if you enjoyed it. Subscribe to continue following my channel and my journey through Falcom games. I suspect that my next venture will be to Gurumin, but I could maybe be persuaded to Xanadu next, or even Dinosaur Resurrection, depending on the translation speed of that. I hope you'll stick around to see. Have a great day, and happy gaming!